Welcome in, everyone. Pull up a comfortable chair, settle in, and join us at the table. We are genuinely thrilled you are here with us today.
Absolutely. It is always great to sit down and dig into all of this with you.
And if you've been feeling like the world of Indian cinema is currently operating at just this breakneck speed, like it's shifting shapes before you can even register what just released, you are absolutely not alone.
Not at all. It is moving incredibly fast right now.
That is exactly why we are here. We have this frankly unprecedented stack of updates, critical reviews, sociological deep dives, and cultural insights straight from the brilliant minds over at IndiaRevue, and we are going to untangle all of it together.
It truly is a formidable mountain of material today. Looking at this specific collection of news and analysis, it feels less like a standard entertainment update and much more like we are tracking the shifting tectonic plates of the entire Indian entertainment industry.
Right, it's not just who got cast in what.
Exactly. There is a profound amount of movement, significant friction, and this rapid evolution happening right beneath the glossy surface of these headlines.
And that friction is exactly what we're going to focus on. Our mission for this deep dive is to bypass the standard promotional spin. We want to look past the heavily curated Instagram announcements and the dazzling theatrical posters to decode the actual mechanics of what is happening.
Because the mechanics are where the real story is.
Yes, because right now, Bollywood and the broader Indian cinematic landscape is operating in a state of extreme, almost dizzying contrasts. On one end of the spectrum, you have these monumental, earth-shattering box office expectations. We're talking 2,000 crore pressure cookers, which, for context, is roughly $250 million riding on a single weekend.
It is a staggering amount of capital.
Then, on the completely opposite end, you have these quiet, deeply intimate, boundary-pushing dramas finding their footing on streaming platforms. And then, just to add another layer of complexity to the mix, we have timeless, surprisingly provocative lessons reaching out to us from beautifully restored 1960s cinema.
It's a compelling time to be an observer.
Yeah.
And arguably a golden era to be an audience member, provided you know where to look.
Yeah, if you can sift through the noise.
Precisely. The sheer volume of news we have today can seem overwhelming, but if you look closely, it all connects. The historic box office triumphs, the systemic production troubles, the curated public relations maneuvers, the quiet streaming successes, they are all interconnected nodes within the exact same complex ecosystem.
Let's jump right into the deep end of that ecosystem then, starting with the undisputed apex predators of the current landscape, the titans of the theatrical box office.
The big ones.
The massive ones. You simply cannot discuss the Indian box office right now without dissecting the Durandar phenomenon. The preliminary numbers coming in are staggering. We are looking at record-breaking USA advanced ticket sales for Ranveer Singh's upcoming spy action film, Durandar 2.
The anticipation is completely off the charts.
And the industry analysts are actively comparing the heat on this film to Bahubali. Let's just pause there, because throwing the word Bahubali around is not something the trade does casually.
Far from casual. Bahubali fundamentally altered the geometry of the Indian box office. It shattered the regional ceiling and proved that a pan-Indian and indeed a global audience was hungry for a very specific scale of Indian myth-making.
So to hear Durandar 2 spoken of in that identical breath.
Exactly. Specifically regarding the USA advance sales, it signals a major shift. The diaspora audience, and increasingly a crossover non-diaspora audience, is treating this not just as a Friday movie release, but as a cultural event. It functions almost as cultural diplomacy, disguised entirely as high-octane action.
But let's look at the mechanics of how they are actually building that event status. Because the marketing strategy feels like a masterclass in aggressive, long-term cinematic universe building. The timeline is incredibly tight. They're dropping the main trailer on March 7th and releasing the film globally shortly after on March 19th.
Very tight window.
But here is the strategic maneuver that caught my eye. They are attaching the teaser for Shahid Kapoor's Cocktail 2 to the theatrical screenings of Durandar 2. Cocktail 2 doesn't even release until September 2026. Oh, and Riddhesh Deshmukh's historical epic Raja Shivaji is also being bundled into this theatrical lineup.
They are maximizing the real estate of that theater screen.
They are effectively using one current blockbuster as a launchpad to secure audience investment for the next 2 years of cinema. Does that kind of extended bundling actually work? Or does it just overwhelm the viewer?
It works by hijacking the communal energy of the theater. It's the ultimate captive audience strategy. When you have a packed house vibrating with the adrenaline of a highly anticipated sequel, that is the exact neurological moment you want to introduce your next product.
Strike while the iron is hot,
Yeah,
or while the adrenaline is pumping.
right. However, if we step back and look at why this specific Durandar franchise has the gravitational pull to anchor other films, we have to analyze the foundation built by the prequel.
The 2025 release.
Yes, the first Durandar, which is currently finding a massive second life on Netflix. It established a very specific narrative contract with the audience. A recent piece in Access Bollywood highlighted this brilliantly. They argued that the film's core charm, its true superpower, is its complete and utter lack of subtlety.
Okay, let me push back on that for a second. In an era where prestige television has trained audiences to look for deep nuance, moral ambiguity, and layered anti-heroes, how is a lack of subtlety suddenly a competitive advantage? Is that just a polite, critical way of saying the script was merely a vehicle to get from one explosion to the next?
That is the natural assumption, but the analysis goes deeper than that. It's not about a lack of intelligence, it's about an abandonment of pretense. The review noted that the action sequences are thrilling, yes, but more importantly, every single major character operates with distinct, unignorable motivations. They are painted in bold, primary colors.
So you know exactly who stands where.
Exactly. In a media landscape where we are constantly consuming very dense, complicated narratives, where every character is a shade of gray and every plot is a puzzle box, there is a sudden, sharp craving for clarity.
I can see that. It's exhausting trying to outguess the writers all the time.
Unapologetic, high-tension cinema offers pure, unadulterated catharsis. There is a primal joy in sitting in a dark room with 1,000 strangers and watching a fierce, larger-than-life hero simply explode onto the screen with righteous clarity. It doesn't need to be subtle. It needs to be felt on a visceral level.
That visceral reaction is definitely translating to the projections. Fans online are clamoring for Ranveer Singh's fierce avatar, and the trade is casually tossing around those 2,000 crore box office predictions. But here is the paradox of the current industry. The franchise system is a brutal double-edged sword,
It certainly is.
because sitting right next to this monumental anticipated success, we have an ever-expanding section of the industry that we can only really call the franchise graveyard.
It is a sobering and frankly necessary contrast to the hype. Because while the current spy universes are expanding at an exponential rate, other beloved, highly anticipated legacy sequels are struggling just to escape the development phase.
We're seeing persistent, well-sourced reports that both Dawn 3 and Krish 4 are facing severe systemic roadblocks.
Yes, and we aren't just talking about minor script tweaks here.
No, the reports detail significant behind-the-scenes chaos. We were looking at prolonged legal battles over intellectual property rights, irreconcilable creative differences, major actors walking away from the table, budget disagreements that completely halt pre-production, and visual effects pipelines that are completely bottlenecked. It sounds like an administrative nightmare before a single frame is even shot.
Which forces us to ask a broader question about the systemic dynamics of our industry. Why do some franchises soar while others crumble under their own weight?
Is it just bad luck or poor management?
When you examine the specific troubles plaguing legacy projects like Dawn 3 or Krish 4, it is rarely a lack of talent, and it's certainly not a lack of ambition. The culprit is almost always the sheer crushing gravity of the budget. Massive financial stakes create an environment of institutional fear.
When you have hundreds of millions of dollars on the line before the cameras even roll.
Exactly. Every single creative instinct is subjected to a boardroom negotiation.
So when a budget inflates to those astronomical levels, what does that actually do to the daily reality of making the film? Does it simply paralyze everyone involved from making a decision?
In many cases, yes, it induces a profound creative paralysis. It entirely stifles agility. Consider a mid-budget film. If a scene isn't working on set, the director and actors can pivot, rewrite, and try something new in the moment.
They can be flexible.
But in a massive, VFX-heavy franchise film, spontaneity is a liability. If you want to alter a set piece, you might have to consult a legal risk assessment team, a global visual effects house operating in a different time zone, and renegotiate terms with 3 different talent agencies representing the stars.
It's creatively exhausting.
The administrative machinery becomes so dense and heavy that the film simply cannot move forward. The expectation of matching the nostalgia of the previous films, combined with the vastly inflated costs of modern production, creates an ecosystem where it is financially safer to endlessly debate the script in an office than to actually step onto a soundstage and shoot the movie.
That economic reality perfectly transitions us into something that's been a growing, vital topic of conversation among artists lately: the economics of control. If astronomical budgets are creating this creative paralysis, how are the artists themselves fighting back?
It's a great question.
Actor Kunal Kamu recently provided a very blunt answer to that exact question. He was a guest on a podcast with Soha Ali Khan, and they were dissecting the notoriously grueling work hours and lack of agency in the film industry. Kunal's advice to actors who want to reclaim control over their schedules and their lives was incredibly straightforward. He said, if you want control, you have to become a producer.
It is a simple piece of advice, but it represents a profound generational shift in the mindset of Indian actors. It speaks to a much broader struggle for autonomy. Historically, actors, even the major stars, were essentially highly compensated employees of massive studio conglomerates.
They just hit their marks.
They showed up when called, hit their marks, and endured whatever punishing schedule or creative pivot was handed to them. By actively stepping into the role of producer, artists are attempting to reclaim their narrative agency, protect their physical well-being, and fundamentally alter how they participate in the financial upside of their work.
And we are seeing that shift happen in real time. It's not just about schedule control. It's a strategy for long-term creative and financial survival. If we look for the direct alternative to those bloated, paralyzed franchise budgets we just discussed, we have to look at the Taupsee Pannu and Anubhav Sinha production model.
That is the perfect counterexample.
They have essentially engineered a highly efficient parallel economy within Bollywood. They're looking at a remarkable hat-trick of critical and commercial successes right now with Asihai Thapad and Mulk.
The architecture of their business model is absolutely worth studying. They are actively choosing not to compete in the 2,000 crore blockbuster arena. Instead, they tackle very strong, resonant, often controversial social issues, but they do it on strictly controlled, highly disciplined budgets.
So they don't need everyone in the country to buy a ticket to make a profit.
From a purely economic perspective, this ensures a drastically lower threshold for financial recovery. They do not require a historic, record-breaking opening weekend just to break even. They simply need to connect with their specific, dedicated target demographic.
It makes a lot of sense.
It is a highly sustainable business practice compared to the high-wire, terrifying act of risky, VFX-heavy tentpoles. And crucially, lower financial risk allows for much braver storytelling because the potential financial ruin of an entire studio isn't hanging precariously on every single dialogue choice.
I genuinely wonder if that sustainable model will eventually become the norm rather than the exception. But of course, discussions of the industry's economic models inevitably lead to the discussion of who gets to participate in those models and how they gain entry.
The access question.
Right. Which brings us to a recent, highly discussed interview with Saif Ali Khan. He was surprisingly candid regarding his son Ibrahim's impending entry into Bollywood. We're used to film families offering somewhat defensive statements about nepotism, but Saif openly acknowledged the immense privilege and the inherent foot in the door that comes with their last name.
It was a very grounded take.
But then he drew a very sharp, fascinating boundary. Discussing Ibrahim's journey, Saif said, "I don't know if I should stand next to you and hold your hand."
That is a strikingly honest observation from a veteran of the industry. It acknowledges the undeniable reality of access, that a star kid will always get the meeting and the audition, but it also recognizes a fundamental truth about cinema. The camera is ultimately an unforgiving, objective judge.
You can't fake it on screen.
You can inherit wealth, and you can inherit access, but you absolutely cannot inherit screen presence. You cannot inherit an audience's emotional investment. Saif's comment highlights an evolving perspective among film families regarding their legacy. There seems to be a growing understanding that while they can undoubtedly build the launch pad, they cannot fly the ship once it leaves the ground.
Speaking of flying the ship, Karan Johar offered a brilliant complementary perspective in a recent piece for The Hollywood Reporter India. He was discussing the hierarchy of a film set, and he explicitly called the director a puppet master. He elaborated on how a director's true, overarching job is guiding an incredibly disparate group of cast and crew members toward a single, cohesive vision.
It's an apt description.
If we connect Karan's perspective to what Saif was saying, It suggests that no matter how much inherent privilege an actor brings to a project, no matter whose lineage they represent, they ultimately have to surrender their ego to that puppet master's vision if they want the film to resonate with an audience.
Surrendering autonomy to a director's vision is arguably the most difficult aspect of the craft of acting, entirely regardless of an actor's background. And when an actor does successfully surrender to the right director, the results can chart the course for an entire career.
Do we have a good recent example of that?
A great contemporary example is Akansha Ranjan Kapoor. She recently celebrated the 6-year anniversary of her debut in the campus drama Guilty, where she played the highly complex, outspoken character Tanu Kumar.
Oh, that was a great role.
In her reflections, she noted how that specific initial stepping stone, the experience of being rigorously guided through a difficult role by a director, gave her the baseline confidence required to continue taking creative risks in her subsequent projects. It all circles back to having the psychological safety to experiment.
And taking major, unprecedented creative risks is exactly what is defining the streaming landscape right now. Let's shift our focus to the evolving narrative ecosystem on OTT platforms, because the sheer variety of stories and the formats they are taking is genuinely shifting the culture.
It is a complete renaissance.
And what I find most compelling is that the established veterans of the industry, the actors we thought we knew completely, are the ones leading this charge.
The streaming platforms have effectively initiated a second or perhaps even a third golden era for these veteran performers. They are being offered canvases that simply did not exist in the theatrical model of the last 20 years. Take Anil Kapoor's recent performance in Subadar, which just premiered on Amazon Prime Video, directed by Suresh Triveni.
Such a departure for him.
This is a gritty, unglamorous, intense film set deep in the Uttar Pradesh heartland.
And Apama Chopra's critical take on Subadar was particularly illuminating. She broke down how Anil Kapoor portrays a retired army man, a deeply war-weary protagonist who feels betrayed by the very political system he bled to protect.
It's heavy material.
The film wades into very murky thematic waters, the limits of loyalty, the psychological consequences of warfare, and the often complicated nature of modern patriotism. Seeing Anil Kapoor step into this grounded, broken, vulnerable character in a rural setting is a staggering departure from the hyperkinetic, glossy, invincible roles that have defined much of his mainstream career.
And that departure is the specific gift of the long-form streaming format. The theatrical box office demands invincibility from its male stars. OTT allows them to strip away those exhausting expectations. They are no longer required to save the world in 2 hours. They are finally allowed to just be flawed humans.
Just exist on screen.
We see this sentiment brilliantly echoed in Deepa Gullat's recent glowing review of Jab Kuli Kitab. She wrote a beautiful piece highlighting veteran actors Pankaj Kapoor and Dimple Kapadia. Her analysis focused on how effortlessly, how quietly they portray incredibly complex, lived-in emotional states.
There's no rush in their performances.
There is a very specific, sophisticated pleasure for an audience in watching absolute masters of their craft breathe life into a scene without the artificial pressure of a ticking bomb plot device or a glossy musical cameo to distract the viewer.
It changes the entire pacing of how we consume a story. Actually, Pankaj Kapoor and Saurav Shukla recently participated in a fascinating joint video discussion touching on this exact phenomena. They discussed the changing habits of young audiences consuming content on OTT platforms and how this shift is directly responsible for opening up avenues for stories centered around older protagonists.
Stories that realistically would have been completely rejected by theatrical distributors a decade ago.
By removing the panic of the Friday opening weekend numbers, OTT is empowering filmmakers to take significantly bolder swings. And we are currently seeing these bold swings aimed at incredibly heavy, societally necessary themes that mainstream cinema has historically ignored.
And they're pulling no punches.
Exactly. Let's look at the trailer for Chiraiya that just dropped for Jio Hotstar. It features a powerhouse cast led by Divya Duda, alongside Sanjay Mishra and Tinu Anand, with Shishant Shah directing. Releasing on March 20th, this project is taking on the profoundly heavy, crucial, and culturally silenced topic of marital rape.
That is an incredibly difficult subject to navigate narratively.
Then parallel to that, you have Sudipto Sen's Charak, which aims to explore the psychology of extreme religious devotion and how it can subtly blur the lines of basic human empathy. These are obviously not light, escapist weekend watches. These are provocative, challenging narratives demanding a lot from the viewer.
They demand active intellectual engagement rather than passive consumption. And what is truly fascinating is that the bravery we are seeing on streaming is slowly starting to influence the mainstream, highly anticipated commercial projects. The boundaries are blurring.
We are definitely seeing bleed over.
Consider the current, extremely loud rumors surrounding Yash's upcoming theatrical film Toxic.
The internet is practically vibrating with speculation about this film. The release date was recently pushed to June 4th, which only amplified the anticipation. But the real story is the rumor mill regarding the actual plot.
The rumors are fascinating.
There is widespread talk of a central LGBTQ+ theme. Specifically, the rumors suggest a storyline involving Yasha's character entering into a complex sham marriage with a rival corporate heir who happens to be a lesbian, a role supposedly being played by Chiraiya.
It's a huge shift in narrative expectation.
Now, we must emphasize clearly to you listening that this is entirely unverified speculation. We are simply reporting on the rumors circulating. But let's look at the cultural context. The mere fact that audiences are openly entertaining the idea that a massive pan-Indian mass action star like Yasha would anchor a film exploring these themes demonstrates a seismic shift in what is considered plausible in commercial cinema.
It is a remarkable barometer of changing audience expectations. Even 5 years ago, a rumor of that nature surrounding a mass hero's tentpole project would have been instantly dismissed by fans and the trade as completely impossible. Commercial suicide.
They wouldn't even entertain the thought.
Today, it is treated as a highly intriguing, entirely plausible point of discussion. It indicates that mainstream Indian cinema is, at the very least, teasing the integration of increasingly bold formats and identities. And Yash, as a modern superstar, understands the theater of celebrity perfectly. He knows how to maintain the mystique.
He absolutely does.
His recent airport appearance, alongside his wife Radhika Pandit, debuting a drastically new beard style, absolutely sent fans and the media into a frenzy of decoding what it means for the character. He is controlling the narrative without saying a word.
He is a master at keeping the audience engaged. But while we are discussing the evolution of formats, it's not just the thematic content that is changing. The literal physical shape of the content is morphing to fit our habits.
The vertical screens.
Yes. There was an announcement that producers Ravindra Gautam and Ankur Nayar are teaming up with Vijay Badlani to create a vertical concept series for Cuckoo TV. We are talking about professional narrative storytelling designed specifically from the ground up to be viewed on a vertically held smartphone. It's an entirely new frontier of visual grammar.
It represents a fascinating adaptation to viewer behavior. However, as the industry rushes to explore all these new frontiers, whether it's bold thematic swings or vertical aspect ratios, we also have to critically examine the projects where the execution completely fails to match the ambition.
We do need to maintain a balanced look at the ecosystem, so let's talk about the misfires. A prime example is the recent release Hello Bashan on Netflix, starring the typically phenomenal Vineet Kumar Singh.
The intent was there.
The ambition was clearly to craft a poignant narrative about the intense pressures of the Indian education system. But the execution, well, the critique published in Mashable was incredibly pointed and I think quite accurate. They noted that the show heavily prioritized its integration with the brand Physics Wall.
And for listeners who might not be familiar with the landscape, Physics Walla is an absolute juggernaut in the Indian ed tech space, a massive corporate entity.
Right. And the critique argued that the show leaned so heavily on that branding and relied so lazily on the overused underdog to unicorn startup trope that it entirely lost the thread of actual grounded student storytelling. Instead of an authentic exploration of academic pressure, it felt akin to a multi-episode, highly produced corporate promotional video.
Which is a profound missed opportunity because the hyper-competitive environment of Indian entrance exams is rich with genuine dramatic potential. But when the writing fails the premise, when the audience senses that a corporate sponsor's talking points are overriding the character's emotional truth, the viewer immediately detects the lack of authenticity and disengages.
They check out instantly.
We saw similar structural critiques echoed across several reviews for other recent projects. Look at the critical reception of Mrithyunjay. Reviewers consistently pointed out that the film introduced a plethora of promising, complex ideas in its first act, but completely let the audience down by resolving them with highly convenient, intellectually lazy writing in the third act.
It's that failure to land the plane.
Or Take the Bride, which was billed as a sweeping journey of self-realization, but was widely described as falling flat long before the finish line. Even Varalaxmi Sarathkumar's recent film S. Saraswati was characterized by critics as earnest and highly ambitious in its intent, but wildly uneven in its actual narrative execution.
It serves as a stark reminder of a fundamental cinematic truth. You can assemble all the right ingredients, A-list actors, massive budgets, culturally relevant concepts, and towering ambition. But if the underlying script isn't structurally sound, the entire project collapses under its own weight.
The foundation has to be there.
However, just to prove how unpredictable this industry is, sometimes a highly predictable formulaic script can be entirely elevated by sheer performer charisma.
Oh, definitely.
The reviews for the romantic comedy Najain Khan Agaya were fascinating. Critics openly called it a completely predictable paint-by-numbers love triangle, yet admitted it was surprisingly highly entertaining. And almost all of that credit went directly to actor Jayan Sarna.
He was excellent in it.
He managed to make a massive, seamless leap from the aggressive, dark persona he established in Sacred Games to become a genuinely charming, magnetic, romantic lead.
It is always a specific joy for an audience to watch an actor successfully dismantle the restrictive typecasting box the industry has placed them in. And speaking of genres and choices, for those listening who are looking to update their streaming queues, the platforms are leaning into some distinct themes this season.
Yes, the sheer volume of arrivals is staggering. We are seeing a real resurgence in historical and political narratives, with Gandhi talks arriving soon. We also have Anupam Kher's directorial venture, Tanvi the Great, which is now available for streaming.
Prime Video is busy too.
Prime Video is continuing its push into regional language acquisitions, announcing the premiere date for the Tamil comedy drama Local Times, and they've simultaneously dropped Anagaru Vastaru, the Telugu-dubbed version of the highly anticipated Va Vathyar.
And Netflix is playing the long game.
Oh, for those who love long-term planning, Netflix just planted a flag in the distant future, officially announcing that the hit courtroom comedy Mamala Legal High Season 2, starring Ravi Kishan, will arrive on April 3, 2026.
It is an abundance of modern, algorithmically targeted content. But sometimes, amidst all this hypermodernity, the vertical screens and the relentless pace of the streaming wars, the most intellectually provocative thing an audience member can do is deliberately look backward.
That is a perfect transition, because here's where the conversation gets incredibly compelling. Let's take a deliberate journey back to the year 1966. Media company Shimaru recently released a newly restored, high-definition version of director Mohan Sehgal's classic film Devar on YouTube. We are talking about an era featuring prime Dharmendra and a stunningly young Sharmila Tagore.
The restoration of these classics is vital, because Devar is a phenomenal, complex piece of cinema history that challenges a lot of modern assumptions.
For those who haven't experienced it, let's break down the core narrative, because the plot is remarkably intense. Dharmendra portrays a wealthy, deeply rooted rural landowner, and he falls profoundly, helplessly in love, the central conflict. The woman he falls for is his sister-in-law, a woman who is already married and living within his familial home, played by Sharmila Tagore.
It's a powder keg of a setup.
Yeah. The entire film is this incredibly tense, suffocating navigation of strict, uncompromising societal norms clashing against the agony of a forbidden, highly taboo romance. And of course, because it's 1960s cinema, this deep psychological trauma is accompanied by the absolute smash hit, beautifully poetic song, Baharan Nimera Shaman Lutkar.
What is truly remarkable here is the historical context of the casting and the performance. The trivia surrounding this production is legendary within the industry. Sharmila Tagore was merely 21 years old when she agreed to take on this role.
Only 21 is wild.
Consider the sheer emotional maturity required for a 21-year-old actor to convincingly portray a married woman trapped in a forbidden silent romance with her brother-in-law while carrying the crushing emotional weight of a deeply conservative patriarchal society's judgment.
It's a massive ask for an actor of any age.
She was in the nascent stages of her career, and taking on this incredibly challenging, risky role served as a monumental stepping stone, proving her dramatic mettle and paving the way to her eventual legendary stardom. Dharmendra, conversely, was already a well-established star, and his presence brought a necessary, grounding gravity to their incredibly fraught on-screen dynamic.
It is genuinely difficult to comprehend a 21-year-old anchoring that level of complex, taboo, emotional storytelling. And revisiting films like this forces us to completely rethink our modern perception of cinematic history. We have a tendency to look back at vintage 1960s Bollywood through a lens of nostalgia, dismissing it as purely conservative, traditional, or narratively simplistic.
We put it in a neat little box.
But the reality is that films like Devar tackled incredibly intricate, deeply taboo family dynamics that would still be considered highly provocative and controversial if they were pitched to a studio today.
That is the crucial takeaway. If we connect this historical artifact to the broader picture of what we consume today, it fundamentally alters how we view our current cinematic landscape. We just spent the last 20 minutes discussing the bold swings happening on OTT platforms, shows tackling marital rape like Chiraiya, or films teasing complex modern sexual identities like the rumors surrounding Toxic.
I think we're inventing a wheel.
Modern audiences often believe we are currently inventing edgy, boundary-pushing cinema. But the truth is, filmmakers in the 1960s were pushing the exact same sociological boundaries within the strict constraints and censorship of their era. They simply utilized different tools, metaphors, lingering glances, and highly poetic musical interludes to bypass the censors and explore the human condition.
The subtext was doing the heavy lifting.
The fundamental human desire to explore forbidden emotional territory hasn't changed in 60 years. Only the aspect ratio and the explicit nature of the dialogue have evolved.
That is a phenomenal perspective. The line connecting the metaphor-laden, taboo romances of the 1960s directly to the buzzing, chaotic, algorithm-driven reality of today's industry is stronger than we think. Which brings us to the final major component of our deep dive, the ecosystem of buzz. Because in the modern era, the actual creation of the film is only half the industry. The relentless public conversation surrounding the film and the stars is the other half.
The meta-narrative.
And we have to start this section by highlighting a massive, pure, unadulterated moment of global artistic recognition.
Yes, amidst the daily noise, we must celebrate the genuine triumphs. The Manipuri film Boong recently secured a monumental victory, winning the BAFTA for the Best Children's and Family Award.
A BAFTA, awarded to a Manipuri film. It is an absolutely incredible historic achievement for Indian regional cinema on the global stage. And observing the subsequent social media discussions it sparked has been genuinely uplifting.
It was a beautiful moment online.
It created a rare moment of unified national pride online. It serves as a potent reminder of the global, transcendent power of deeply rooted, culturally specific, local storytelling.
It is a shining, necessary moment of validation. However, as we know, the broader entertainment ecosystem is rarely so harmonious. Surrounding these fleeting moments of artistic triumphs is a constant, almost deafening hum of highly orchestrated PR machinery, public feuds, and celebrity drama.
It's a very loud machine.
If we take a step back and examine this not as mere gossip, but as a fascinating sociological phenomenon, the noise of the industry reveals a lot about our culture.
It really does. Look at the mechanics of the headlines currently dominating the news cycle. You have Govinda, a beloved, historically massive veteran of 90s comedy, currently engaged in a highly public dispute. Following his wife Sunita's cheating allegations, he hit back with a highly cryptic, carefully worded comment stating, "People appear honest, but their loyalties lie elsewhere."
It's intensely personal.
What is fascinating is that this is a deeply intimate, personal family fracture, yet it is being deliberately played out, quote by quote, entirely in the public eye for mass consumption.
And beyond the personal feuds, you have the bizarre permanent mechanics of social media. Filmmaker Gopal Varma was recently trending in the news cycle, not for a new project, but for a resurfaced deleted tweet he made years ago regarding a bikini shot of Kiara Advani in the movie War II.
The internet never forgets.
When confronted by the media about the resurfaced post, his defense was to claim the deleted tweet was actually intended as a backhanded compliment. It perfectly highlights the modern reality that nothing is ever truly deleted on the internet, and it demonstrates how established filmmakers who built their careers in an analog world often struggle severely to navigate the unforgiving, permanent memory of the modern digital fishbowl.
The digital fishbowl is the perfect analogy, and absolutely everyone is swimming in it, including massive television stars. There is currently a highly publicized, rumored rift dominating the television news cycle between major stars Tejasswi Prakash and Surbhi Chanda.
The anatomy of these online rifts is incredible.
The architecture of this feud is fascinating. They were nominated for the same industry award, and Tejasswi posted a video publicly wishing Surbhi success. However, fans immediately noticed she laced the message with a highly specific taunt, referencing a promise of an interview with LEG. Within minutes, the respective fan bases dissected the subtext, took sides, and amplified the rift into a trending topic.
The conflict itself becomes a highly interactive spectator sport. The audience participation is what fuels it.
And occasionally, this digital monitoring intersects with legal realities. The rapper Badja, who is certainly a veteran of navigating controversy, just received a formal legal notice from the Haryana State Commission for Women regarding the lyrical content of his song Taterji. It proves that the cultural and institutional monitoring of art, particularly lyrical content, remains highly active and consequential.
But perhaps the most bizarre aspect of the modern buzz ecosystem is that it doesn't even require the stars themselves to generate the headlines. The people adjacent to the stars wield immense narrative power.
This is wild to me. Let's talk about telepathy, VJ.
Right. Consider the recent situation surrounding him. Amidst intense, ongoing public scrutiny and rumors regarding a potential divorce from his wife, Sangeeta Swarnalingam, Vijay made a public appearance attending a wedding alongside his frequent co-star, Trisha Krishnan.
That alone would generate headlines, sure.
But right before the event, Vijay's personal bodyguard, a man named Arun Suresh, posted a highly cryptic, vague note on his own social media. The internet immediately exploded. A bodyguard's vague, unsubstantiated post instantly became front-page headline news simply because the audience is so desperately hungry to read between the lines and construct narratives around these massive celebrity lives.
It perfectly highlights the reality of modern fandom. We are dealing with a culture that is obsessively, endlessly hungry for narrative drama, even when a clear narrative hasn't been provided. The public figures become essentially blank canvases, and we, the audience, eagerly project our own desires, suspicions, and dramas onto them.
But to maintain a balanced view of this ecosystem, we have to acknowledge that it isn't solely fueled by feuds and cryptic drama. Let's balance the scales with some pure, wholesome moments, because the fans are equally capable of celebrating genuine joy.
Yes, let's look at the bright side.
The recent videos of baby Raha cheering for Team India alongside her parents, Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt at Wankhede Stadium. Those clips went viral universally for a very simple reason. Amidst the highly curated, often cynical machinery of the industry, it was just a genuinely sweet, unguarded, human family moment.
We saw a similar outpouring of positive engagement for Allu Arjun's recent, highly joyful dual celebration. He was publicly celebrating his 15th wedding anniversary with his wife Sneha Reddy on the exact same calendar day that his brother, Allu Sirish, was tying the knot with Nayanika Reddy.
It was a massive family event.
It serves as a grounding reminder to the audience that behind the towering, intimidating box office figures of a pan-Indian Pushpa superstar, there are real, tightly knit, highly relatable family milestones occurring.
Absolutely. And similarly, Janvi Kapoor just celebrated her birthday surrounded by an immense amount of visible public warmth. Her day included traditional visits to the Tirumala temple for blessings, and her social media timeline was flooded with affectionate posts from her extended family, Sonam, Kushi, Anshula, and Arjun.
Plus, the media eagerly highlighted a very cute, much-discussed birthday wish from her rumored boyfriend, Shikhar Paharia. Oh, and if any listeners want to participate in the absolute lowest-stakes, most purely fun debate on the internet today, the portal Rediff is currently running a highly engaged, a lighthearted poll asking users to vote on Rashmika Mandana's best on-screen wedding look.
It is pure pop culture fluff, but it's incredibly fun.
It acts as the perfect palate cleanser. It demonstrates that the Indian entertainment industry is not a monolith. It is a complete, vibrant spectrum. It encompasses everything from the deepest, most challenging artistic ambitions of independent filmmakers to the lightest, most ephemeral interactive pop culture moments.
So we've covered an immense amount of ground today. We've analyzed the mechanics of multi-year blockbuster marketing, the economic battle for creative autonomy, the sociological impact of boundary-pushing streaming shows, the surprisingly provocative nature of 1960s taboo romances, and the chaotic, hyper-analyzed buzz of modern celebrity life.
It's been a journey. As we synthesize all this information as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the core underlying thread?
Synthesizing all of this raises a very fundamental question about the power dynamics of entertainment, and it's a concept I want to leave you, the listener, to actively mull over long after this finishes playing. We spend our time analyzing an industry that constantly, almost violently, swings between meticulously crafted artificial PR narratives and deeply intimate, boundary-pushing artistic expressions.
Right.
We talk reverently about directors functioning as the ultimate puppet masters on set, guiding the vision. But as we look at the sheer force of audience reaction today, we have to ask, are the directors truly the ones in control? In this hyper-connected, algorithmically driven age, where a single viral tweet or a dedicated fan campaign can genuinely derail a career or resurrect a dead project, and where immediate digital box office data dictates whether a legacy franchise lives or dies, is the audience, in fact, the ultimate puppet master?
That is a fascinating shift in perspective.
Do our collective clicks, our localized ticket sales, our viral debates over cryptic posts, and our unified social media outrage ultimately direct the evolution and the specific artistic choices of Bollywood more than any single visionary filmmaker ever could? Are we the ones who are truly pulling the strings of this entire massive machine?
That is a brilliant, highly provocative thought to leave off on. Are we the actual puppet masters? It fundamentally changes how you view your own participation in the culture. Think about the weight of that the next time you decide to buy a ticket, or click on a trending hashtag, or engage in a debate about a film. Thank you so much for joining us at the table today, for bringing your curiosity and for exploring the intricate depths of this massive, beautiful, chaotic industry alongside us. From headlines to heartbeats, you've been listening to Bollywood Deep Dive by IndiaRevue.com. Catch you where the stories are.